So multi-channel retail has really bitten in the UK, slightly less so in France and Germany. So if you were to draw a line from London to Istanbul, all the way through sort of Central Europe, if you like, you could do gradient lines across that to show e-commerce penetration from the highest penetrated market to the lowest. So what that also means, of course, just as in the US, is that store traffic has been in significant decline just recently. So what this chart shows is the rate of change in store sales along the left-hand axis here, of course, in years along the bottom axis. You can see that in 2002, we reached a peak with nearly 7% increase in store sales. And that rate of increase has been declining over time till about 2009, when suddenly it went into reverse. And store sales are now in reverse, just as they are here in the US. I think here you've got something like the last reported measure, store traffic in major US shopping centers over November and December last year in 2013 was 1/7 of what it was at its peak in 2010. So a very significant reversal in the fortunes of stores, and we're seeing the same thing. And so the message that we are taking out to our clients, and they're reflecting back to us basically, is that their customers are changing incredibly fast, and they need now to transform or perish, and it really is as critical as that. The digital shift is now top of retail CEOs' agenda in the UK, increasingly now also in France and Germany, just as it already is over here. So how do retailers combat that? It's really 6 key strategies, and if we had the time, I would go through each one in turn, but just very quickly, a better offer, because it's always all about the product still. Better branded, so you're more front of mind. More convenient, and e-commerce really is about convenience. More efficient, because you've got to take cost out of the system in order to be able to compete at web prices for many people, slightly less so in clothing and footwear. And international, because economies of scale are so important. And finally, better organized, more digitally centric, more customer-centric. To enable all of these things. And you have really anything between, kind of unlocalized e-commerce. In other words, you kind of open the door, you sell in dollars, you're willing to ship anywhere, but the customer has to pay the shipping fee and the duty. That's the, entirely unlocalized. It's worth starting with for sure, and many of you will already be doing that. Through to obviously localized e-commerce, and I think Lindsay spoke very eloquently about the elements of localization. But then indeed, the opportunity to do that in tandem with stores, everything from perhaps franchise stores through now an increasingly common model, which is flagship stores. Just put down 2 or 3 stores in the capital cities or the major population centers to make a statement. And then finally, for those who are really brave, a chain of stores, although obviously with store sales being in decline, that is a rarer and rarer strategy these days. There is one retailer I know who is doing only this, in other words, only opening stores now in national markets without considering e-commerce. And it is the one exception to the rule, and it's a business called Primark, which is the UK's most successful fashion retailer, in fact, it's Europe's most successful discount fashion retailer, off-price. I would say actually probably the world's most successful retailer. If any of you are in the off-price segment, I recommend you take a look at Primark, an absolutely phenomenal model. Wherever they open stores, they're able to generate queues around the block. The highest sales densities of any business that I've seen, other than perhaps Apple, and a truly astonishing model. But they are the exception. Okay, so let's consider then what are the factors that we would consider in choosing one market over another. And it's a whole array of different things, and time is too short for us to go through each one in turn, but you see them sort of scattered up here. So clearly population characteristics, the affordability of your offer, regulations and taxes, what currency, payment methods, and so on. These are all the different things. And the truth is they are too many for you to be able to just kind of whiteboard them and then say, okay, well, based on that, eyeballing it, which market do we think we should, which market should we prioritize? You have to have a rational approach to bringing all of these together, weighting each one of them in terms of their importance to you, and then effectively scorecarding them. And you build a numerical scorecard to prioritize markets. We've done this now probably 20 times for different businesses. Obviously, the weighting is always different depending on the offer and the brand itself. But I highly recommend it. You can do it internally if you don't want to go to a consultancy, and it's well worth doing. And these are just some examples of the kind of factors that you might consider. One of the most important factors, obviously, is going to be market scale. because the cost of localizing for a national market is the same whether that's a big national market or a small one. You've got to localize language, you've got to localize delivery, you've got to localize payment methods and all sorts of other things, and it's the same fixed cost whether it's a big or a small market. So let's take a look at Europe and see where are the really big markets and why. So first, this map shows the populations of different national markets in millions. You can see the UK, roughly 64 million people. Germany, the largest, most populous market in Europe, 81 million. France, 67. Italy, 60. And on the basis of that superficial analysis, you might think, well, great, we go for Italy, Spain, Germany, the UK, the big markets, maybe Poland. But not at all, of course, because over that you have to overlay then the gradient of e-commerce penetration. This is the gradient curve I was talking about before. And then what you see is that the UK, with 11% e-commerce penetration in a market of 64 million, is by far the most attractive in terms of total scale. However, it is also the most competitive in some sectors, and one has to be aware of local competition. So this is where your scorecard comes in, because you start to evaluate the intensity of local competition for your specific offer, and then weigh it against those other factors. Two businesses that are well worth looking at when you're considering international expansion. I've already mentioned one of them, ASOS and Zalando. ASOS and Zalando, you've got ASOS here, a £770 million, billion dollar business. It grew by 40% in its last financial year, so growing like Topsy, and profitable, by the way, 8% return on sales, pre-tax return on sales, an impressive rate of profitability for a business that's growing this fast. And then Zalando, which is something like €1 billion, is it? No, 2 billion euros, there we go. 2 billion euros, grew at 70% last year, but did so at the expense of minus 6% return on sales. So a somewhat different model, they are buying customers still. But both of them extremely international now. The vast majority of ASOS' sales now, you can see, are international, this gray part of the bar. So roughly 500 million comes from international. And you can see roughly where: the USA, Europe, and the rest of the world there. So rest of the world, actually quite a significant part of that now. But the UK, Europe, I should say, represents the single biggest region alone. And they are, I mean, there's no sign of them slowing down at the moment. So they have really nailed international e-commerce. So the key recommendations I would make to you are make this a strategic decision. This has to have CEO involvement. It can't just be hived off or partnered out. Plan diligently and clearly identify your priority markets. Put someone in charge and make it a full-time job. Localize effectively, especially PR, social marketing, those sorts of things, to build a brand. Remember, you're building a brand in each of these key markets. Set realistic and well-informed targets and KPIs, and invest and have patience, because sometimes the payback doesn't happen very quickly, especially if you're having to build a brand, build awareness. These things do take time, and that's all from me. Thank you very much.